And joining us from England, we have Don Armand, ex-England international rugby player, played for the Exeter Chiefs. Don, how are you doing?
Thanks for having me on. Very good, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be on today because we've had a previous conversation just over the phone, and it was very exciting. It's kind of sometimes you resonate with people, and there's no reason to resonate, and it just happens. And I think we had that conversation. So I was in America last week and got back, and I've been looking forward to this for a while. So
yeah, me too. Yeah, well, it's good to hear. I agree. I felt we hit it off straight away, and it was interesting subject which we're going to cover today. But first I was going to ask you, because I've got one or two friends who are one is ex-international, England international, elite level rugby player, and the other one was England A, so not quite into the first squad, but I imagine
it's not much difference.
Are wafer thin when it comes to that very top level.
It's the coach's opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what I was going to ask is how physically, because to give context to what you were a flanker, you're a big fella, very big fella.
Yeah.
And the amount of punishment and fitness and just the sheer size of you guys, how fast you can run is frankly to me astonishing. But I like to watch the rugby, of course, the internationals, and sometimes you see the hits, and I've played rugby before, and I know what the hits are like, and it's painful. And I'd never broken a bone until I started playing rugby, and I broke 3 within a year and a half. Yeah, and when you see a really, really big hit, it's like getting hit by a car or something.
How when everyone goes, ooh.
Yeah, you can hear the whole crowd.
Yeah.
You can hear it.
Yeah. I think there are G-forces that were similar to car crashes.
But how are you physically?
To be honest, I'm good. But I've put a lot of effort into it. So I always used to be quite good at doing recovery because my mind would always go long-term, which is both a blessing and a curse, because when you're putting your body on the line in the moment, there's way more emotion on it because you know what you're sacrificing. So I was quite good on recovery, ice bars. Since I retired, I like gone down the ice bar route. I've run 2 marathons. I've done 3 peaks, like really trying to make sure that I've prioritized getting my body in a position so that when I'm a granddad, I can throw my grandkids in the air. It's kind of the best analogy to put there. So luckily, I've had an operation on my shoulder because I had a dislocated AC joint. I've had an operation on my wrist. I've had an operation on my groin and pelvis area. But those, if you put in time, what I realize your body will heal. So I've been putting in the time.
And by putting in the time, that means no gym or very little gym, lightweight.
Yeah, for different. I suppose I have definitely been gym. So my routine is like cold shower, ice bath, pull-ups, press-ups. So I always said I'm going to do a lot of body weight stuff because that's going to get in line like tendons, and muscles and everything, and not just when you do the heavy weights. So I still got a home gym. So like this morning we were in there, it's just 15 or 20 minutes of say bench press, some banded stuff, and maybe some core work. But it's just so like there's some aesthetics that I'll still go after, but I'm also knowing that I'm also looking at deeper down stuff to make sure it's all your connective tissue is in line with what it's meant to be. So
I've always
funny enough, I said when I retired from rugby, I'm never running again. But I run 2 marathons because I found that running, and I'm inherently efficient, and that can also come across as lazy. So it means that I'm going to find the most efficient way of doing exercise without having to do it for as long as possible, work as hard as every single time. Running was the best way that I found I get my heart rate up really quickly and maintain it without having to exert myself at a maximum level. Because I tried this, like I've got an assault bike, but to get a high enough heart rate over consistent time on an assault bike, you have to work quite hard. So I went for a run, and within 2 minutes, your heart rate shoots up and you're able to it's not as if you're sprinting, but even just a jog, you're able to really get a good tone on it. And so running is a big thing now.
I'm the same. I have to say my philosophy is pretty much exactly like yours, to try to do the least amount of possible, but maintain.
Yeah.
I play football, and I still play for a veterans team, but they're all veterans team where I live is from 30 or 32. So they're still extremely fit people I play against.
Wow.
And I'm 51.
Yeah.
So I got to be on my game. So I don't really like going for long runs. I used to do that a lot when I was in the army, and pre that and after that, and just not for me. But what I do say is I'll go down to the field and I'll do 100-meter sprints. So
very good.
5 or 6. That gets your heart rate up.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good to actually look. Do you know those curved woodway treadmills? Yeah, that's my next to get, because I want to do sprints. But obviously, living in England, sprinting in the winter is
slippery.
It's slippery and muddy, and at some point it's a bit like, I'm not trying to be David Goggins or anything, but that is just a really good way of getting the sprints in.
You know the thing you're talking about. It's like an oval shape, but it's human powered. You adjust it. They're really good. They got one in my gym recently, and I started doing the backward walking things because I was having problems with my no, not my knees, actually, with my calves. I kept getting calf strains, and that made them a lot worse. So I've got to obviously do a lot of work on the calves to get them sorted out. But I like to say that when I speak, anyone asks me about fitness and what I do, and like I say, I don't do much. I do the absolute bare minimum I possibly can. But pull-ups is one of my things, and I like to say that that's the granddaddy of all exercises.
Yeah, it's really hard to do.
Yeah, they're hard to do. Even to get to, if you've never really done them before, to do the proper knuckles towards you, straight arm, lock out the arms.
Yeah.
And all the way up, all the way down each time is, to do one or two.
It's a mental battle.
It is. And then next thing you know, you're doing 5. Next thing you know, you're doing 10, and then 15. And the goal for me is to get up to 20.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm still on like 5 a day.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But people always say to me, like, it's because you're so light compared to you. I say it's all relative.
Yeah.
But you are considerably bigger than I am, that's for sure.
Yeah, it just shows me I'm out of proportion. I know that. So, because if I can't do more than 10, I could probably do 10 as a one-off. But if I was to try and do 10 every day, it would be that's like when you're trying to battle through something every day. Whereas 5, it's consistent.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that also makes sense. That also makes sense. I had a guy who I went through Sandhurst with, the Army Officers School, who was Australian, and he was not far off 2 meters tall. He was about 6'5", something like that. Big boy, wrestler. He didn't make the Olympic team for Australia, but he was a strong guy.
Yeah.
And he could knock out 15, 16 in a row easy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And he was a beast, and he was fast.
Yeah.
And that's always, I'm not particularly fast, but I'm faster than most, let's say.
Yeah.
Until you play against somebody who's really fast, and you think, all right, well, it's different levels to this.
Perspective is key in life, isn't it?
And then then I used to play a little bit of rugby or doing some phase with some friends who are county level rugby players, big guys, and can outsprint me. And I was quite surprised that he could be that big. And I thought, this guy's an animal.
Yeah.
It's the freak of nature, because you shouldn't be able to do that, right?
But it's all relative.
It is all relative, but my gosh. But you're okay, because I have one of the friends, he was a flanker for England Day, and he's popping ibuprofen like sweets all day. And I said to him, this is more than 10 years ago, and I said to him then that, they're really bad for your gut health. Those things are actually not good at all for you. You need to find something else. But he said that works. So anyway.
We can dive down that quickly.
Sure.
I was very anti taking stuff. So when I first got to Chiefs, especially, it was, I didn't take painkillers, I didn't do any of that, but you get indoctrinated into a system. And there was a good routine of paracetamol, ibuprofen, and something for your gut, so your gut wouldn't hurt after the game, plus some caffeine, plus BCAAs, plus like beta blockers. Like, honestly, some of the stuff you get, there was about 2 or 3 years where I didn't take it. And then you start to maybe get, you're probably not getting the rest that you need because of the demands of rugby. And so you go, I'm a bit sore, so I'm going to take that. And you're going to feel better. And then you suddenly find yourself in the cycle of painkillers and caffeine to perform. And what I found was I was struggling to make it through a game on energy levels. And I used to be like 80-minute whistle would go, and I'd be like, I can still keep going. Like, I could keep going. there's like one of my things before I came to Chiefs was I had an engine on me. So that I started to lose that engine. And I can imagine you would go, oh, maybe this is, it's old age, you played a lot. But then actually what I started to do was like, I'm going to cut caffeine out. I'm going to stop taking the painkillers. So I started to make sure that I was trusting my body to be as natural as possible, because I knew the ibuprofen and all that kind of stuff was killing my gut and killing my stomach. So I got to the point where I would have a cup of coffee in the morning just to wake up with breakfast. And that would be it. Maybe some nut bars, have some breakfast, go in and play a game. And I started to get my longevity energy back. And I didn't feel like I was behind, because I wasn't trying to spike. I wasn't doing this hormone spike of energy and insulin and then drop and trying to balance that out. And it was so much better. So I'm anti taking medicine to the point where my mom and, my wife will say, the kids are sick, give them this. I'm like, no, let them suffer, because they also have to fight their own battles, and that's good for their immune system up to a point. And so it's the same with me. Like if I get a headache or things like that, I'm very anti taking stuff, because I feel up to a certain point, we've got to trust our body to do what it does.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I take an ibuprofen or a paracetamol once in a while.
Yeah.
If I've got a real bad, let's say I've hurt something, but it's rare. I mean, it's maybe once or twice a year, if that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I have discovered recently, because over here in Switzerland, if your kid gets an ear infection, which, every winter when it's snotty noses come and the colds and the coughs, they get an ear infection, and every time you go in and it's antibiotics. And I said to the doctor, look, I don't think you're really curing anything here with these antibiotics, and you're doing a great deal of damage to their gut health, because it's antibiotic, anti-life, kills everything. I know there are specialized for various different things, but I found out about oregano oil. Have you heard of this?
Is it like? No, I haven't.
It's like an essential oil of oregano. Is what you get it in the pharmacy. If you get it's not homeopathic. I don't think it's homeopathic at all, but it doesn't taste very good. It's quite not a chili burn, but a burn.
As is anything that's good for you, it's terrible.
Exactly, yeah. It tastes bad. Castor oil. And I started using that. And I also started using iodine in a spray for your throat when you get a sore throat.
Yeah.
Because what's the first thing you do when you go to the hospital and you got a cut, and they just get the paintbrush of iodine and just slap it on?
Get rid of all the bugs.
Gets rid of all the bugs. And that has been very effective for the kids. And it's just a couple of drops, some olive oil. And it really works. So put that one down into your list.
I'm actually was just trying to clear my Post-it notes to write that down as you were saying it.
And there's another one I've recently picked up, which is methylene blue. Have you heard of this one?
No.
It's a mitochondria booster. It's a dye. It's blue. It might turn your pee slightly green.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Again, very good as a booster for your system, for your immunity. So there you go. Write that one down. Methylene blue. I'll send it to you after.
Okay, thank you.
Because I'm all about the... Sorry, my phone just went off there. I'm supposed to have a business meeting after this, but it's about the trying not to take any pharmaceuticals as much as possible. Yeah. Because that's...
Keep it for desperate times.
Exactly. Yeah, there we go. So what about diet? You talked about caffeine. You have one coffee a morning. That's the same as me.
Yeah. Well, no, I used to for rugby.
Are you completely
I don't
off?
Anymore. So I've cut caffeine out. I've cut alcohol.
Completely.
We've got to diet. Like I don't drink. I actually had a conversation yesterday. Someone was like, oh, don't you drink? I was at the rugby. And I was like, I don't say I'm not a drinker. I just don't drink.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I don't want to put this taboo that I'm resisting alcohol. It's just not something that I choose. I don't have caffeine. And I think at the root of it, there's a slight concern that I've had a couple of concussions, and anytime I hear anything that affects how your brain works, I'm now letting my brain heal in its own way. So I think why I originally started ice bars was because I was like, okay, it's anti-inflammatory and I need to help my brain heal in the best way possible. Caffeine I don't take, alcohol I don't drink. We try and prioritize sleep. With 4 kids and a couple of businesses, it's really hard to make sure that you're fitting it all in. But so we are quite diet aware. Sometimes, and there's always a balance. I think you have to go through the extremes to find your balance. Because I think the problem is people always say, don't go to the extremes. But sorry, my dog is,
It's all right.
if you don't go to the extremes, then you won't know what that extreme looks like to find a proper midpoint. And this all started because my mom-in-law, she used to say everything in moderation. And eventually I was like, but what is moderation? Because if you've been in one end of the extreme of having cereal for breakfast and toast, and you have a sandwich for lunch and you have pasta for supper, and then you say everything in moderation, you think you've got that in moderation, but actually you're having 10 times the amount of carbohydrates that you need for the amount of energy that's giving you that you're using. So moderation is contextual, and unless you know the extremes of everything, you actually don't know what moderation is. So I've, since before I even came over to England, I've been looking into, Tim Noakes with his banting. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it was like under 200 grams of carbohydrates a day. And he even wrote a book in the 80s and 90s about running and carbo loading. And then, how much water you should take. And then he did some sciencey stuff because he's a scientist. And then he wrote another book saying how wrong he was. And off the back of what he did, people were breaking 10-year personal records on marathons and distances and stuff like that. So he was more about get more fats in you rather than just being carbs. So he undemonized fats in a roundabout way. And so I was on that because he used to help our university team out. So for a long time I've been banting. The fasting I'm definitely into. I've never gone the extremes with keto because I think that there's a time and a place for that, and you need it for a set amount of time. But I would never go vegan. Not that I disrespect vegans or I judge them, but I just, from the start, I've read enough varying points of view on it to know that it's good if you want to clean up your diet. It's not good as a long-term diet. But then again, if you do cyclical and you go vegan carnivore, vegan carnivore, banting and all that kind of stuff, you'll generally find yourself in the right place because all of that is clean. And I suppose at the end of the day, we try and do clean as close to nature as possible. And then every now and again, you allow yourself to stray off of that. So that's my approach to diet.
Yeah.
And sparkling water.
Sparkling water.
Yeah.
How come? What's with the sparkling water? The minerals?
No,
Is that your little treat?
Water is, I didn't know how much there was to it. It's because it's the best in between, because I get bored drinking just water. And so then what you normally do when you're bored drinking just water is you add something to it, whether it's lemon juice or you start to add this. People always add something to water because it's boring, right? It's boring. Whereas sparkling water, I never get bored of it. Like even this morning at like 6 a.m., I had this nice cold bottle of sparkling water as I read. And it was just, I don't know what it is. There's maybe the sensation of it or anything like that. It just, I'm 12 years, 15 years on, I'm not bored of sparkling water.
All right.
So I would easily have a sparkling water over a Coke or an alcoholic beverage or anything like that. That's my drink of choice.
Yeah. All right. And so typical breakfast for you, if you have breakfast, do you eat breakfast?
No, I don't eat breakfast normally,
but
so
you just wait for lunch.
I wait for lunch as long as possible to eat. So it's almost at the point where I try and listen to my body. But my ideal routine would be, black decaf coffee, because you still want the antioxidants in the morning. Have something small around lunchtime just to start to get things going, and then have a supper, have a dinner. It changes if I'm at home. Like if I'm at home, I'll eat a bigger lunch just because you're at home. But if I'm at the office, I generally won't have. My ideal breakfast, though, if I was to eat, is a fry up. So I'm talking eggs, I'm talking bacon. Like just if you're going to eat,
all in,
make sure you eat properly.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I used to, I kind of cycle in and out of the not having breakfast, but I actually find my performance if I go to the gym first thing, or once the kids are at school, then I'll go to the gym, and I perform much better when I'm fasted, which apparently goes against the science. I don't know, but that's how I feel personally. That's how I feel. And with regards to caffeine, I gave up caffeine last year for like 6 weeks to 7 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll do that again. I will cycle a bit of caffeine. But I don't drink much. Like I said, usually have one a day.
Yeah. And it's good
What,
for you. There's benefits to
yeah,
it.
I have some decaf coffee as well. It just doesn't hit the same, you know, it doesn't got the same flavor. But what I would say is coming off caffeine, which is actually wasn't as hard as I expected it to be because I suppose I'm quite low dose caffeine anyway. But the what I noticed is the dreams. My dreams came back. Do you know the vivid dreams
Yeah.
that came back, which is I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, mild headache on the first or second day, mild, very mild, and then after that, no problem. Absolutely,
Yeah.
didn't miss it in the slightest bit.
So,
It's weird, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, my wife challenged me because she was going on. We've had 4 kids, so she was saying, "Oh, I can't bear not having caffeine," and like, and I said to her, I was like, "What are you going on about? You're just not having caffeine is not a big deal." She's like, "Well, why don't you try it?" And I was like, "Fine, I will." And I did, and I was like, "I don't know what you're complaining about." But I think because when you can't have something because you're not allowed to, it's different to when you've chosen not to. And so I just haven't looked back. Interesting you say about the dreams there, because I think if you look into the depth of caffeine, it's not as much, as far as I understand, it's not a stimulant as much as it is a blocker. It's a blocker of the thing that makes you tired. And the thing that makes you tired, if you think about at source, why is it making you tired? Is because it's prepping you to sleep better at night. So if you're blocking that, your sleep cycles and everything are going to be further away from what they should be. And so the deep sleep, that your vivid dreams, that means your brain is properly firing the way it should to repair itself when you're sleeping, to clear it out. Whereas if you've got this caffeine still in your system, it's got like a 12-hour half-life or quarter life, which means that imagine going to sleep and your brain isn't able to do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
So you're stopping your brain from having its optimal function to wake up the next day and be optimal. So you're having to take caffeine to be more optimal. And
yeah. I heard it put a good way, and that was you're robbing tomorrow's energy for today.
Yeah.
And that's how we put it. And I thought, everything is fun. Everything I like to do is illegal, you know?
This is the human nature, isn't it?
Human condition, exactly, yeah. So what is it now that since you've retired, what are you these businesses you're talking about?
Yeah, we've got it. I mean, it's interesting. We've got a few going on. So the most successful one, not the most successful, the most consistent one is our pool. So we moved into a house, we're multi-generational living. So got my in-laws and my mom living with us. We had to find a place that fitted everyone in. And the place that we found happened to have a pool, an indoor pool in it. And when we first moved in, we were just like, oh, we'll just maintain it. And then there was a lady that lived in a town that we're in. And she was like, I've really been wanting to buy that house to turn into a spa because I got a swim school. So then my wife was like, okay, well, what if we rent it out to you? And she's like, I'd love that. So we then turned into a business. So I've got to do like customer facing stuff. I've got to do the operational side of cleaning the pool, making sure. I've had to become a scientist of water, which is honestly,
I can
complicated.
Imagine.
Yeah, it's complicated. Like there's 2 things that you test, but there's about 8 things that mess up that testing. And the best cure I found was fresh water. Is if you mess it all up, stick water in, then the tap water is going to reset it all to a neutral, and then you can try again. Instead of trying to like, once you dose little bits of here, it upsets the balance this side. So it's kind of like life, right? If you try and mess with something here, it's going to upset the balance there. And you've got to understand how it all plays a part before you start to mess with something. So we run that pool, and that works really well. So we've got swim schools, we have private people that come in. It's really cool because you kind of get the pool for an hour for yourself. It's like, it's a dream for me. I hate going to public pools where there's like 50 other people and you know that they've 3/4 of them have done a wee and kids are splashing you and you like, and the smell of chlorine isn't an excess of chlorine. You know, it's a mixture of the chlorine reacting to wee and sweat. So a smelly pool of chlorine is meaning it's cleaning the uric acid and all the kind of stuff that's in there, just so that you know. Doesn't mean that it's safe to clean to swim in. Cool. Yeah, sorry if you're.
No, that's okay. Do you have is it a saltwater pool? Do you use one of those?
No. So we want to. I'm actually chatting to one of the guys that he's looking at transforming it to saltwater. But for now, we just energy prices went up through the roof in the UK, so it means that our profit, energy prices went up threefold. So it was like from 800 to 2,300 or whatever a month because we heat it so you can have babies swimming in. But it's okay. We didn't raise prices. We want to it serves the community, and that's what really helps us. Then I had a e-commerce business called The Gaming Athlete, which was health and wellness for gamers, which is basically trying to say treat yourself like an athlete, because if you do that, then you know you're going to be looking after your body, which is the thing that actually helps you game better if you want to make money, or if you're just doing it as a hobby, it can't take away from who you are. Some of that started in lockdown because there was, and I was never going to use this as our marketing thing because it wasn't my story, but I saw an article about a kid that had died of a pulmonary embolism because he got a blood clot in his feet, which went up into his heart, and he had a heart attack and died. And his dad had said, if only I'd known that was that was going to happen, because he used to sit for like 16 hours a day. But his dad said that was the only way he was keeping sane with his friends, because they would game all day. So I had originally started it as compression socks, because like, oh, that's an obvious thing and it's not being done. So we need to create some knowledge around compression socks for gamers that sit still all day. Which, because I think the way I do, suddenly then developed, before we even started, into a whole clothing brand, a whole community thing. We've got this big global dreams of, it's going to be everywhere. I learned a lot. I didn't know a lot. So that didn't really work out. And I was doing that just before I retired. Then I retired, slowed it all down, then tried to keep my integrity by paying off the business loan, which then added on a bit of extra stress coming into post-rugby life, where you now lost your salary. But after about 4 months out of rugby, I then bought a business it's called Samson Armand now, that does leadership development. I bought that off someone that had prostate cancer, which had spread to his bones. He was terminal. He had like 6 months to live. But I knew, so in my thinking, I've had this e-commerce business that I didn't know how to lead because I didn't know what I didn't know. So I may as well buy a business that's going to have all the structures and the information that I'm going to need, so that I don't spend the next 2 years trying to search and make sure that I do know it all. Because there were elements of what I did in sport and the personal side of it and the leadership side that I knew I had naturally, but this is going to have a bit extra to it. So I bought that, and I've been spending the last year and a half trying to make sure that it's my own. And it's been a big identity thing of you buy someone else's business, that's their business. And especially because it was a consultancy, it wasn't like there was proper setup structures around the team and not the individual. And yeah, I did that on my own, that has been quite a challenge, because you kind of get accidental mentors along the way, in terms of you listen to people because they know from their perspective, but actually you then doubt everything that you know. And eventually it gets to the point you're like, actually, I do know what I'm talking about. I do know this kind of stuff. I am going to do it my way. So I spent about a year and a half listening to a whole lot of other people and not realizing that was their truth and their way of doing it and not mine. So, it's getting to a much better place where instead of offering everything, I more want to go the confidant type service. So the man at the top, we talk about personal leadership, everything that I'm about, I really understand that I've got these standards. I've got this way that I think leaders should present themselves consistently. They should understand people. I'm way less about the commercial leadership and way more about your personal team cultural leadership. But it takes a while to kind of define that. And so that's where we start to get into behaviors and like I got a psychology degree. So there's a whole lot of stuff that comes with that really backs up that focus. And then we've also got identity human, which is taking completely the commercial side out of it and putting it all into personal leadership. So like my thing is I'll make you unshakable. We'll talk to you about, here's some things that'll help you from a performance mindset. Here's a thing from identity that you can do your own research into. Essentially, I'm going to try and give you the very root foundation of what you might need to build you back up. And that's been interesting because that's kind of going to the digital CEO space. So you've got podcasts. We've got to do podcasts. You've got to do social media. And all while you're building this up, you're doing it all on your own. But I'm really enjoying it because I know in a year or two, we're going to have a team and I know exactly how to lead that team. So it's almost redoing gas, but in a way that's way more me. I'm way more authentic in it. And then my wife's a chartered accountant. So on her side, she's got her own business. She's got her own practice and she started up a second one with a second niche. So we are constantly just trying to see how we build it all. But we have 4 kids and we very much protect the time with them. So, we're very family orientated. So it's trying to make sure we do all of that and keep work-life balance. And it's been a fantastically interesting journey so far.
It sounds fun. Do you have any sons?
3.
3 sons.
Yeah.
Well, and it applies to daughters as well now. But would you try and push your sons into rugby?
No.
I knew you were going to say that.
No. I think team sport's amazing, but how I would term it, the ideal approach from what I know now, work on yourself, start a business, do a team sport as a hobby, because when you're in a team sport, you're answering to someone else and your value is determined by that coach or that individual. And if they don't like the way your approach is, you're never going to succeed. Whereas if you're in a business, that's you put the work in, you'll get it out. You don't put the work in, you won't get it out. And I think that you can learn a hell of a lot in a team sport about behavior and about understanding and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think you necessarily need to be paid to learn those lessons.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I would say to them, it wouldn't be rugby. It would be just if you want to get elite in the sport, do an elite team sport, but also do individual stuff along the side, because we always, you can term it self-awareness or individual impact into collective impact. And you need to learn all 3 to understand how it all ties together.
Do you regret playing rugby? Did you find fulfillment from playing rugby?
That's a good question. It's hard to say you regret something because you don't know
Exactly.
I wouldn't say
fulfillment then.
Yeah, so fulfillment's the better one, but I wouldn't say I regretted it, because the stuff that you've learned and the memories I've made, they've been incredible. And I definitely don't look back at it in a bad way. I love it. Do I sometimes think, wow, if I'd known what I know now, where would I have gotten if I didn't play rugby? But then I wouldn't know what I know now without rugby. So it's But fulfillment, I would say there were elements of it that fulfilled who I was, but it wasn't the rugby as much as it was what I represented when I was playing rugby. So the ability to be able to take pictures of fans and know that you can inspire people to, some of the stories about people that I still talk to now, they were saying, like, you guys got us through at my darkest days, I used to come to rugby and it used to help me get through things. So you were playing a part in something, but rugby in itself was probably not my exact thing. And the only reason I know that is because what I do now, it lights me up. So when I like these talking to people, sort of like interacting, seeing what change you can make on a really big individual level, that fills me. Like, I'll stay up till 2:00 at night reading a book or doing some research on something, or trying to think. My mind will just be busy on it. Whereas it was never like that with rugby. Like, I was easily in bed by 10. I know I needed to watch some lineouts, but yeah, it's probably like when I did watch them, it was like, oh, how do I watch this to make sure that I can get the most efficient side of it? Yeah, instead of going, yes, look at her. But I always used to see other rugby players that would, watch rugby on a Friday night, play it on a Saturday, watch it on a Saturday, watch it on a Sunday, message you on a Sunday and be like, what do you think of this? We should do this. And I'd just be like, how do you have so much time for rugby and energy for rugby? So in a roundabout way, I thought it did. But if I was to be honest with you now, rugby didn't fulfill me. But it was the elements of, the personal interaction, the team, the players, there were elements of it with how it stimulated your mind because of performance and motivation. I think those things really did fulfill me.
I like the buzz, post-match buzz, when you're high as a kite, just from the cocktail of whatever chemicals are pumping through your body. It's like adrenaline, oxytocin, all these things, dopamine, especially when you win.
Yeah.
But so what kind of techniques are you using? We talked about, for your leadership aspects, we talked about on the phone a few weeks ago about you developed your 7 traits. Is that something we can talk about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't develop them. They're part of the profiling that we choose to use, and that's called I3. And that's fantastic because it's based as a gift. Like, it's, what's your gift? And the biggest issue I see coming into the business world is people are building up a business where they need to be resilient and they need to know how to be, who they are and authentic. Because when you're authentic, you don't get as stressed. When you're authentic, you don't get that burnout because you're getting fed energy doing things that you love doing. No one knows what that is. So, like I said a bit earlier, you've got self-awareness leads into individual impact, which leads into better collective impact. But people ignore the self-awareness. They don't have an impact on themselves, so they can't have a collective impact. They can run a business, but then they're running a business with unhappy people. The people, their leadership's not being effective. And you'll often find that the key isn't the business or the culture. It's the fact that self-awareness isn't there. So the approach that I think we should all be taking, so you've got to lead yourself before you can lead others. And you've got to understand how you can lead yourself by knowing who you are. So we really dive deep into your traits. So you've got these 7 traits, and they're all gifts. So as your gift, they're going to sound a bit weird, but when you understand them, and if I was doing a one-on-one with you, you would really understand how they would play out in the world. But these are one-dimensional aspects I'm delivering, as in, is your gift prophecy? Is your gift teaching? Is your gift serving? Is it mercy? Is it encouraging? Is it leadership? Or is it giving? And if I expand on all of those, you will start to realize, so we talk about how you build self-awareness is as simple as what makes you feel powerful, what makes you not feel powerful, what takes your energy, what gives you energy. And when you can start to be aware of that, that's one thing. The next level is how you then describe it so that you can repeat it. And that's where I feel the I3 and the gifts and knowing them allows you to go, oh, this makes me feel powerful. What am I doing in this moment? Oh, I'm giving. What am I giving? And as it starts to build, you start to build these layers of, I know that I really enjoy leading people because those are my top 2 gifts, for example. Or if someone's a businessman or a businesswoman, they go, I really enjoy giving. Well, what does that mean? So why is this going to be? Well, actually, when I run a business, I'm making money. And when I make money, then I can go and give to other people. So it's actually not so much about the money as it is the giving. But we aren't able to disseminate that information. So people just get stuck in the cycle of, I'm going to grow a business, grow a business, grow a business. And it's like, well, hang on. If you love growing a business, it's because you actually love giving things. So make sure that as you grow your business, you are filling your, I'm going to go give to, whether that's charity, my people, myself. Giving comes in many forms. And when you start to understand that, then you will start to really navigate to what suits you and then build the world around you to do what suits you. And the beauty is I'm quite skeptical of things because integrity is a big thing. So if I'm sitting in front of you and I'm saying, Nicole, these are your gifts. And then you go and I'm like, oh, there's my money. I've made my money. I want to make sure that in a year or 2 or 3, if you've taken that feedback seriously and if you've dedicated your time to understanding all 7 traits, so that you can understand exactly which one is yours and exactly which one isn't yours, that it's going to be meaningful. It's not just some flash in the pan. So I've done friends, I've done family. I constantly analyze, if this is your gift and this is what you said it is, how is this playing out? And to be honest, especially in the moments of stress or pressure, which is when we don't have time to be self-aware of something that we're not, the people that have answered it accurately, it really plays out. And I sit there and I'm just like, that's what that looks like. But as well as when people aren't aware of how they're acting, especially there's the trait of encouraging, people are incredible because they are lively. They're the life of the party. They are constantly positive. And when you watch them, because you can identify their gift, you kind of just like melt in front of them because you're like, I love what you are because I understand them at a level, even though I've only interacted with them for maybe, 2 hours. But there's certain behaviors that you can start to pick up because they're not thinking, they're just being. And when people are being like that, you can resonate with what their gift is because you recognize it in them. And that's where the beauty of understanding these 7 traits is. You recognize it within yourself. If you can start to recognize in others, you know how to resonate with them by speaking their language, by not thinking, oh, this person's totally over the top with their energy, they're being fake. And you go, actually, that's just who they are. And this is amazing because I know when I need energy, I'm going to hang out with you.
Yeah. Can you tell people's traits from just hanging out with them?
It would take some are easier to see than others.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things you have to observe by what they're doing and how they do them. Certain of them you can see by how they're acting and how they talk and how they present themselves. And then I'm also adding on, there's a guy called Alex Paulos in America, and he's self-published a book, but he's done, I'd find some of his stuff on Spotify. He doesn't put himself out there, but he's written a whole book on genetic and profiling. Alex Paulos.
How do you spell Paulos?
Paulos.
Paulos. Okay, I wrote that down. People can Paulos. Paul O.S.
Yeah, Paul O.S. Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
going to check him out straight after this.
Yeah, but he's only probably been on maybe 1 or 2 podcasts. You won't find much about him. But I met him when I was an American, and he looks at genetics and profiling. So can you look at someone's face and generally tell, are they more emotive led? Are they more straight as it is? Is their communication soft, or is it will they want you to say, just get to the point here, like tell me exactly what you need? And when you can start to get a rough, so what I like is taking his stuff, taking the gifts that we do. We also do mental toughness stuff on top of that. If you can start to create a whole picture of someone, who they are biologically, where they think they're at, and where they're at in terms of their life, because the mental toughness thing, that changes, you can really resonate and get their best out of them. Like his stuff fascinates me, but I think you have to have a certain interest to go as deep as he does. And I'm just at the beginning of that journey, but there are certain aspects it's all about recognizing patterns. If you can start to recognize patterns in others, you say, so for example, are you more emotively led or are you more factor and figure led? If I have a rough guess, I would then be able to talk to you more of an emotive side versus more of the factor figure, like, okay, let's just get to the point here. And if you can start to do that, generally you will get better rapport with people quicker, which allows you to lead them better. Now, he said at the very beginning, he says, it's very dangerous because if you put this in the wrong hands, you got people that are going to manipulate others. But then I also say leadership is very, very much if it's in the wrong hands of someone that understands it, they can be very destructive, i.e. Hitler. If it's in the right hands of someone, it's the same concept, it's the same thing. They're doing the same thing, just one's bad intentions, one's good intentions. And that's where it is. Manipulation and inspiration are exactly the same thing. One is bad, one is good. But we see it as different. So Hitler was a very good leader, just terrible in his intentions. But he was able to get a whole country, his propaganda, all that, the way he spoke. He got people to do atrocious things. But I imagine that in the hands of someone good, and they were able to inspire people to do those things.
Be nice to have a leader like that now.
Yeah, we need one.
Yeah, that would be good. What's the basis for these 7 traits? It sounds like something that is old, thousands of years old. These traits.
So they don't. It's interesting because I have different viewpoints to the company. It was originally called the Gifting Institute. It started at a church in South Africa. So they've taken, I've actually got the original book, Ask and It Is Given. It's from the Bible. So these gifts are from the Bible. And they would have said that there were certain characters in the Bible that had these gifts. But they called them something different, like an orator and an administrator and a server and all that kind of stuff. But these gifts come out the Bible. And that's what I really love about it. It's not Freud and his analysis and in building a system, because he would have built it from his own point of view. It's like, it's tens of thousands of years of wisdom into a Bible, and someone's gone, he has an essence, he has a gift. And then obviously you develop it into a language that's more modern day. And why I really like that is when I look at Alex's stuff, that's more, he's taken a combination of all the scientific approaches. He's taken, scientific studies done in countries and seeing it's a lot more analytical, but there's also some spiritual sense to it. And they overlap in so many different ways. So when he starts to speak about certain characteristics and traits, I'm like, oh, that's the same as, the encouraging trait, but it's said in a different way. So it almost reaffirms that they are on the right track. And I love it. The problem with I3, the one we do, is it's very much, if I sent you the PDF on it wouldn't sing as much as if I understand it and I can really talk to you about your gift. Only then does it pull out of you. Because the ironic thing about self-awareness and understanding ourselves is it's very hard to understand who we are, because the things that you are come to you so easily you don't recognize you're doing them. The things that you're not, you're putting effort into, so you're aware of that. So then you say, I am that. But actually when someone says, are you really that? It's like, well, yes, but because I put in effort and I'm aware of when I'm doing it. But if you're aware of it, it means that, you're not necessarily doing the thing that you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because things that I find easy, other people find very hard. So,
Yeah.
for instance, doing what we're doing now is some people's worst nightmare, and that's coming from one of my very good friends, who is a real life and soul, funny, very funny guy. And I said, look, you and we should do some conspiracy podcasts together because it'd be a lot of fun. And he said, no, I can't do it. I'm not that guy. I said, you can do it in a bar with a few drinks in you, but you can't do it. We could even have a few drinks if you want and get him going. But sounds to me you're saying that you need, unless you have an exceptional degree of self-awareness, that you need it's always easier. You can always point other people's faults out. It's very easy, isn't it? You can be all judgmental, and you can see other people's faults, but you can't see your own. It takes an exceptional amount of self-awareness to do that. And I'll tell you what, because I've tried it myself, to try and, you list all your bad points, and it's not it's not a nice thing to do. You start to realize that, and what's really bad for me, which really hurts me, is when I see my son doing things that just like me, and I can see him doing the same thing, and it's like a knife, it's like a dagger right through the heart. I'll tell you that. So so you, just by speaking to someone, you can figure this out.
I wish it was that easy. There's certain people. So put it this way, some people might be multi-gifted, and that's when it gets hard. Some people are out and out one trait, and those are the easy ones. Those are ones where I'm just like, I'm resonating. It's not that simple, because it's not as if you only have one trait. We all have all 7 in us, but you'll have some that are stronger than others. So you'll have, the analogy I've taken from Alex, which I use, is he says you've got a coach and you've got 7. He uses, you've got sports stars and you'll have some superstars and some bench players. So I'll say, like, your top 3 are generally going to be your superstars. They want to play the most. And then your bottom 4 are going to be your bench players. They're going to be needed. You're going to have to know how to play them. But as the coach, that's your job. You have to know your players inside and out. So if I get better at recognizing people and their behaviors and how they think, I will be able to say, well, I know you might be these top 3, but I know that you're definitely not that one. If I know what you're not, by simple process of elimination, I can get your top 3 or 4, which means that I can resonate in the way you think. Like, are you a long-term, big picture thinking person where we can actually talk about the future and goals and visions, and you will get excited by that and you'll be like, wow, or do I need to talk to you about, like, tomorrow we're going to do this, and like the smaller detail than now? And in that approach, am I talking about people or things? Because if I know that you're people-centric and people-orientated, that's going to excite you. Whereas if I talk to you about people and that's your bottom trait, you're going to be like, okay, I mean, it's great, but, I'd like to talk a bit about facts and figures here. So I'd have to change the language a little bit. And it's not as easy as just saying, I can see how, because everyone puts on a front. So you could be putting on a mask. And that's where I like Alex's stuff, is as in a combination, it just gives me a much better way of going, what's the shape of your face? Are your eyes deep set or out set? How many wrinkles do you have? Do you need to focus on things? Do you like to go deep? Do you like to go shallow? What kind of conversation do you need? But I also think that, the reason we resonated straight away is the type of conversation just flowed naturally. So if you're with like-minded people, you don't have to guess, because it just is easy. It gets difficult when you with maybe people opposite. And then you have to go, okay, are we opposite in this way or this way? So I know that you and I would be very similar in certain ways. So I don't have to think about what is Nicole. I just know we can talk and we will resonate in certain things. So I don't have to worry about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, totally. It brings me back to something I've spoken on about quite a few podcasts recently, and we talk about the conditioning we get as kids. I presume in Zimbabwe, it's maybe a little bit different, but from the UK, but it's pretty much everywhere in the West, is you conditioned to be a good worker, effectively. Let's put it that way. You go to school to learn something, then you go to university. If you're lucky enough to go to university, then you're supposed to go on and do whatever you do at university. But I know very, very few people, unless they're doctors or engineers or dentists, lawyers, they do something and their career doesn't go anywhere near what they studied at university. So it seems for me a bit of a waste of time. But we get siloed into these roles. And I see a lot of people who do a job, they get paid, let's say they get paid well at it, and they have a nice life, but you can see it in their eyes. It's not really what they want to do. It's not their passion. Now, so it's interesting for me because what I like to do things which I like. If I'm doing a job that I don't like, then I'm one of the worst employees you're going to have. Well, no, I wouldn't say that, but
I know what you mean.
I've got no skin in the game. I just I'm doing this for a paycheck, and that's not me. I'd like to. Feels like your soul's being
you need
crushed.
to have a bit of buy-in to it.
Yeah, you need something that you actually like to do, and something you're naturally good at. But at the same time, people want to make money, and if I've seen it with my own eyes, it doesn't necessarily make you happy. I mean, certainly more comfortable for sure, but happiness, I'm not sure. So, is there anything about that what you're doing is that you can? Have you ever helped someone who's completely changed their career and gone and done something that they really, really wanted to do?
Unfortunately, yes. And
oh no,
not that they've changed. There's been a couple of guys that have coached in leadership that have quit their job halfway through. And so obviously that doesn't look good because the company hired me to make better leaders. But what they don't realize is making a better leader doesn't mean that they are going to fully commit as a robot. They're going to be more authentic to themselves, which makes them a better leader. If they're not going to be a good leader in your organization, they're going to leave. And that's the thing is like when you start to become self-aware and you start to realize what you don't want to do, then you build up the integrity and the confidence to stop doing the things you don't want to do. That's where people make those changes. And I think everyone's beholden to fear of change. Is someone will listen to this and be like, yeah, I definitely am that. I definitely am doing this, even though I don't want to. And it's like, well, why don't you change? Because I've got to bring in the salary. I've got to do this. Well, actually, you could probably bring in that same salary at a different company doing something you really love. You just haven't looked because those excuses get in the way. Like wherever there's a will, there's a way. If you talk about manifesting or anywhere where what's the reason that you create a future vision of yourself is because when you've got a future vision, you are drawn to the things that suit that. So if you create a strong enough vision that you love, you will know that what you're doing today that doesn't suit it or lead you there, you'll stop doing it because you'll get courage from doing that. So I heard a Jim Rohn quote this, or he saw a video this morning. It was brilliant. He says, in the Bible, it says, do we walk through the valley of the shadow of death? And he says, that's because not everything is that pleasant, but why do we walk through the valley? It's because we can see the other side. And if you've got a vision and you can see the other side, then the valley is a part of a process you have to get through. But if you can't see the other side, you will just walk into that valley and you think, I'm stuck in this darkness.
Interesting. Do you believe in manifestation? Is it something that when I say believe in it, it's believe is, this is some of the letdowns of our English language is that,
we're about to lose half of the people's attention when we say this, but yes, because it just depends on how you term it.
Yeah, well, that's it. The point I'm trying to say is that manifestation is something we see. It's a bit new agey. It's a bit of a trendy word right now. I'm trying to figure out a different word for it, but I guess it's like, you can say goals orientated. I don't particularly like that either. But whatever in my life, and again, I cannot emphasize enough. I'll do the things that I want, but I'll do it well enough to be not the best, but I'm up there to keep your job basically. And even then it's not good enough. Sometimes you get kicked out, but doing things that you want to do, but having that something in your mind and that's basically what I have done is to do something that I've got in my mind. And then suddenly it happens and people think it all comes quite easily to you. And but it's not, the way I see it is if that's what I want to do, if I want to have that, like for instance, start a podcast, which is a bit of a folly in many respects, but it's my hobby. I really enjoy it. But for anything I've done in my life is to go and do it, have the idea first, then you have to realize what you're going to do. So I'll give you an example. When I went to actually do the selection to become an officer, or even to become an officer cadet, so just in training, is that once you realize that you've passed the pre-tests to get in, you think, all right, well, should be a walk in the park. But that was the easy bit. And that wasn't very easy at all. You know, any sort of selection, for instance, like for you going to elite rugby, then you come up against a team and then you're like, oh my God, these guys are phenomenal. I really, really need to raise my game. And then you start to find different gears to it. And then you progress. Then you probably take your foot off the gas a little bit. Maybe not for you guys, but for me. And so it's very interesting that the things that I've had an inclination for, I've achieved.
Yeah.
But, and so, you know, we've got the same speaker's agent, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck I can speak about, because I'm not a motivational speaker, because I'm probably the anti-motivational speaker.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, I'm motivated by things that motivate me, but other things, forget it. I mean, I can't do it. What do you say to that?
What are you going to speak about? What's your story? That's what you're going to speak about. That's the most energetic and motivating thing you can say.
I know, but it's just, it doesn't see. So when I say manifestation, I'm not sitting there meditating on it or praying on it.
No, so
doing that.
Yeah. To get to your question, the original question about like, do you believe in manifestation? Yes, but let's term it. It's everyone does it. The problem is we try and think that because I'm going to think about something, I'm going to manifest it. And by the way, I thought about that and I tried to manifest it and it didn't work. It's what actually feels to your gut that you want.
Yeah.
And we deny
intuition.
That. Yeah. Like intuition, you deny that. But everyone talks about how we develop resilience and what is grit and all that kind of, everyone has that when they align it with something that they really want. But you have to be brave enough to lean into what you really want and not what you think you want. Like, what's £1 million or £1 billion going to get you? So some people I'm manifesting money in. Yeah, but what for? Money doesn't serve anyone as much as we think it does. It's what we do with the money. So try and think, you know, if I had a goal of becoming a billionaire, it's like, well, what are you going to do with it? So, well, this effect I'm going to have with that money. I'm going to be answered to no one. I'm going to go and I'm going to, you know, put 1,000 wells in Africa because there's 700 million people still not having access to clean water. So you then go, oh, that actually makes me feel really good. So yeah, I want to make money now. Then because you've tied a feeling of something you can get with the money, you then go, okay, well, what do I need to do with that? So you start to manifest all the different things that are going to allow you that end goal, that end manifestation. So it's like how you would term it in a more analytical process is you got ultimate goal and performance goal. Your ultimate goal is that big, scary, audacious goal, but you've still got to want that. That's what you're manifesting. Manifesting isn't this like crazy woo thing that no one's known about. The Secret was written ages ago. My mom had a vision board. People, even you're listening to this, you go, manifestation's a load of nonsense. It's not. You do it. You just don't call it manifestation. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I agree. And it comes back to I mean, I think it's probably as old as time. If you want to do something, just planting that that little seed, and it's something that resonates, because intuition is something I like to talk about or like to read up on my own. And it's one of the things when in my calm space, I'd like to think about intuition and how to get more in touch with it. Because if you tap into our intuition 100% of the time, you'd be having a great life.
Yeah.
Now, I think we all instinctively know when something isn't right.
Yeah, but we ignore that.
But we often ignore it.
Yeah.
You know, it's let's go to that nightclub. I don't really want to go, but you do it anyway. You know, you go to the nightclub with your friends. That's a bad example, but
no. So I mean, maybe I'll give you an example of when I bought the business. I knew what I should do, but I didn't. And now 2 years later, I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm. So
my intuition straight away was like, this is what you need to do. And I was like, nah, that's wrong.
Yeah. Same thing with doing this, really. It's for some, I don't know. I mean, there's no real logical reason for doing podcasts. There really isn't, but it's fun and you get to speak to interesting people like yourself. But ultimately, really, what's all about? But I couldn't ignore it, you know? Yeah. I've had this feeling that this was going to be important for my life in some way, and I didn't really understand what it was. But I did the same thing before when I left UK, and I quit a very good job, sold my house, sold everything, packed up my car and moved to the Alps with a very loose plan. But it's brought me everything in my life. You followed, that's it. I had something in my head said, you can't do this. This is not for you. And now I'm not saying it's not achieve success is not the right word. It's success for me.
You're in the process. Yeah, that's important.
It's not, financial success. It's the fact that I've got
isn't it? Yeah.
It's a family. I have a wife and I've got
Don't you think that that's so interesting? What you did right there was you mentioned the word success and then felt like there was like, oh, it's not financial success. This is actually, why are we comparing everyone else's version of success that no one actually strives to, but everyone thinks we should. So therefore, I do the same. Someone goes, how's business successful? I go, well, it depends how you define success. And everyone will always come down to, at the end of the day, oh, it's how much money is it bringing in? But really, it's got nothing to do with that. Everything to do with, are you present? Are you happy with who you are? Are you providing? And are you living in line with who you are? That's success. The money is extra. As long as you're not, living in debt where you can't provide for your family because that's not going to live in line with who you are, you're successful. I think that we set ourselves up to fail so often because we think I need to have £1 million in the bank account, then I'll be successful. Actually, we're all successful now, and success is a journey. So you're constantly in that journey. We always feel like we have to explain ourselves. And it's like, at some point, we've got to be so confident with our journey and where we're going that if someone says, are you successful? You're like, hell yeah, I am. And they go, yeah, but how much money are you? And he's like, it doesn't matter. You just laugh at that. And that's growth. That's what we've got to get to. But it takes a bit of realization, I think.
Well, for me, success is healthy family. Everyone's doing fine. No, there's no issues. The fact that I can do these things, that my moneymaker job doesn't take that much time, so I can do these sort of things, and that I can go out in the woods, take off my socks and shoes and wander around barefoot, and there's no one around in nature for an hour or two. I really love that. That's one of my favorite things to do. I'm going to go skiing this afternoon because I live very close to the lift, and it's a beautiful sunny day. So I'm going to go for a ski, and that for me is success. And I know a lot of people who pay an awful lot of money to come to where I live and do it for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, it's when everyone else comes. So they all started arriving this weekend.
Yeah.
And, I probably won't ski very much this period because there's just too many people.
Too busy. Yeah.
And I don't like it. So that's my how I measure my success. But also what I've noticed, Don, and I would like you to see if you can break this down with your psychologist degree
viewpoint,
is, so I thought I'd achieved all the success I ever wanted. And I was in my late 40s. I literally everything I dreamed of having as a kid, I've got. And I never really dreamed of having a Ferrari or a helicopter or a private jet or anything like that. It'd be nice. I'm not going to lie. It'd be quite nice to have all that sort of stuff.
To appreciate it.
Yeah, but then am I willing to put in the hours and the days and the weekends of work to afford that? And the answer is no. I would rather spend time with my family, and especially because my wife works full time, and probably more than full time. She has to travel a lot as well. But I can fill in the gap for both of us to an extent, and spend a lot of time with the kids, which has always been my dream. When I was 15, I said to my school teacher I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, or marry well and be a stay-at-home dad, and I did for 8 years. Kind of still am.
Nice.
But I hit a point, Don, and it was probably 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, where if I've achieved everything in my life that I wanted to achieve, and the success I wanted to achieve, the success defined by what we just talked about, I still felt like I had something else to do. Now, again, that's a feeling inside me. I'm not sure if it's a genetic thing. I don't know if it's been programmed into me by my conditioning from society, but I've got this voice inside me saying, do something, you got to do something. And it happened to be a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Where this is going to take me, I don't know, but I feel like it's going to be something good, right?
Yeah.
But what is that? Do you know what that feel? Can you explain psychologically what that feeling is, that to strive for more? because it often doesn't lead to fulfillment. And what I've noticed with people where I live, there's a lot of very wealthy people live, not far away from me. I don't live in that neighborhood, right? But a lot of them don't seem very happy. They don't seem very fulfilled. So it's not success, not financial success, it seems to be what I'm seeking. It's something, there's something else that needs to come.
Yeah.
If you look at there's another few chapters left in the book yet,
Yeah. So there's two approaches. I would say the first one is, are we reaffirming a bias that people that are rich aren't fulfilled and happy? Because there are people that are rich and that are happy.
Yes.
That, as in like just a general note.
I know some people, I know a lot of people who are doing fine and
so,
don't care.
Yeah. And exactly that.
A lot who are just chasing money and they're not very happy.
Exactly. And I think that that's where there's a level of self-awareness that you can have, and you got to not immediately think you're going to put yourself in the camp of the people that have made themselves money and aren't happy, because you've defined your success. Now, a lot of the current narrative is so funny because it's around, this trauma is driving you. But actually, what if your gift is driving you? But it's been defined as trauma. So, for example, one of the gifts, the serving one, has perfectionism as an innate trait in them. But if you go and look on every Instagram, LinkedIn, or like, perfectionism is killing you. And it's like, no, stop. You're telling someone to stop being who they really are. Instead of saying, you've got to just find the context with which your gift is needing to be utilized and where you need to just calm it down. Because the more we try and fight something, the worse it's going to get, right? And so for me, what's like really sunk to me there is a gift that has ambition at its core. And that's the leadership one. So it's like, well, what does that mean? It's like this kind of person will find themselves in an organization as the classic example, and they'll need a career pathway. And they'll be the best at it because they'll make sure that what they're doing, once they've got the understanding and the whole concept, they'll be the best at it. But if they get to a point, say after 2 years, and they don't have any progression because it's just not an option, even if they have a really good job, even if they're super happy and there's nothing going wrong, they'll go, I'm bored, I'm leaving. And everyone goes like, wait, why are you putting it? And it's because their gift, that thing that drives them that they don't necessarily be aware of, is going, you're meant for more than this. You're meant for more than this. And it's not about the money. It's not about the title. It's about the fact that you have this innate thing to be, I want to be at the top of whatever I'm doing. So you've got, say in your example, you got your happy family, and that was your goal. And by the way, if I'm right in say that's your top gift, it's a goal-orientated gift. That doesn't mean you set goals that are precisely, but it's like, I've got this goal. It's manifest. It's like essentially a natural manifest. I've got this goal. I don't know how I'm going to achieve it, but I'm not going to stop till I get there. Mm-hmm. So you would have reached your plateau of happy family, and then there would have been someone, if that was low in you, you'd be like, this is just, I'm going to live the next 50 years like this. And you would have. But because you've got that one higher up in you, it's going, this is great, but you're meant for more than this. This is great, but we've got something else to give. Mm. And that's why it comes naturally to you to jump on the podcast and be like, and everyone's like, oh, I could never do that. It's so much hard work. And you're like, oh, I'm just living true to my nature. I'm making progress. Because if your gift is to make progress, it's not a bad thing. Ambition can be, so ambitions, people will term in the wrong way. Ambition is bad if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. But if you're doing it because it's in line with who you are, don't fight that, because you will only end up in 10, 20 years regretting that you didn't do what you're doing now, because your gift was to do that.
Exactly. And that's that. I mean, I've always had the feeling as well, is that I don't regret anything that's happened in my life. And you mentioned trauma, which is something I went down that rabbit hole as well. And then one of my guests said, that trauma's a thing. And he actually is so matter of fact about it. He said, but trauma's a thing. It's going to affect you if you let it affect you. If you understand what it is and how you can use that to, you don't let the trauma define you. You use it to as almost fuel for the fire. Is that you don't, and I made the point is that, my great grandfather was in the trenches in World War I, went through the Depression in the 30s and World War II, and grandmothers, great grandmothers, and all that. And so I find it quite hard to like, really, was it all that bad? Some people said some mean things to you,
Yeah.
when you're younger.
Interestingly, on that topic, it's all relative, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Oh, I understand.
I imagine you'll be a naturally positive person, even when you're going through some bad things. You'll always be able to find perspective because you'll know someone else is going through something worse.
Yeah, and I also am quite good at giving myself a slap and giving myself a shake and having a word with myself and saying, "Hey, snap out of this. There's nothing good happening."
And that's why you struggle to tell your story too as a speaker, is because you're like, but why is my story special? Because there's people that are way worse. Like, I get that.
Yeah.
And what you've got to find the balance of is that that's your gift, that's your perspective. And actually, trauma to some people, that they don't have a different outlook. It is relatively huge to them, and we can't live a life where you say if I know you wouldn't do this, but let's just say you would say, just crack on, what's wrong with the trauma? That person doesn't have the ability to just crack on. We've got to help them develop themselves to change their perspective on trauma. Because, by the way, I was listening to this, I think he's a PhD in neuroscientist and masters. His story was his daughter got Crohn's and then another autoimmune disease. His name's Don Wood. And another autoimmune disease. Doctors in America, all the doctors, everything said, there's no cure for this. Don't know where it comes from. You just live 15 minutes away from a hospital. Her lungs could fill up with blood in 15 minutes and die. So he was like, nonsense. I'm going to go and do some research. He quit his job, went and got his master's and his PhD that he's got now. And en route found out that those autoimmune disorders can be caused by trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we've got to be careful about knocking trauma and what it does to the way we think. So he went and chatted to his daughter and found out that at 6 she was sexually abused and had never told anyone. And obviously that's a big trauma. And off the back of that had developed Crohn's, had developed another autoimmune disorder, treated her, got her through it, and cured herself of her autoimmune disorders, which the doctor said were not curable. So he explained trauma it's a response, which then creates inflammation, because inflammation is a protective mechanism in our body for a certain amount of time. But for too long, it then becomes degenerative and starts to manifest in sickness. So what had happened to her was she was protecting herself, then the inflammation stayed for too long and got sick. So he then starts to take a root cause of all the stuff. And trauma is, we have to be able to empower people's minds to be able to change how they view trauma and give it perspective, for example. Some people can't do that naturally.
Yeah. I was a little bit trite with what I said there.
No, I get it.
At the end, what you said there was pretty much what I was trying to say. I mean, I know some people who've had absolutely horrendous things happen to them and have seen horrendous things. And I know what it's like, in the military, people see some pretty nasty things. But again, if you go back in time, when the levels of trauma that people would have experienced in day-to-day life, imagine seeing your kid getting carried away by a pack of wolves. That's going to be traumatic. Or the Mongol hordes coming across the steppe, and that everyone's going to die.
Survival brain, yeah.
I know that's yeah. So I understand, but
right. I suppose there is the other end of the example that you're saying. There are some people that would have been, and the example he did give was, we have to also work on some inner child, and he calls them micro concussions, like emotional concussions, where the example he gave was this one lady would struggle to speak up. Like, she was very quiet because she remembered at church, she was talking one day and her granny hit her on the head and said, keep quiet. But to a kid, that's trauma. And that's what we forget, is like, as adults, we've grown to be these protective, we've grown up to live in a world where mongrels will come over and the Mongolians, all that kind of stuff. We were, as adults, you make it because you've learned to protect yourself. The problem is, we will all be driven by traumas as a kid. They don't have to be huge, big traumas, because that's where the autoimmune diseases come in. But the little things like, someone telling you that you're not good enough, then means that you live a life of trying to prove that you're good enough. But what they weren't actually telling you is, when they said they weren't good enough, they were just saying, do you think you can get your B to an A? But as a kid, you interpret it as like, I'm not good enough. because adults won't say it in a way that kids understand. And to you as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, that is trauma. And so to anyone that says you hurt my feelings and they're a 25-year-old person, it's not them. It's not the 25-year-old. It's a 3-year-old that has a trauma that hasn't been dealt with, a micro trauma, that's now manifesting as a big emotive thing. And none of the parents that raised them had the cognitive ability to be able to help them empower their own minds. So we're dealing with a whole generation of people that are scarred from kids because you had parents that were going through depression and war and saying, what you've got going on is nothing. You're an idiot. No, this words don't matter, all that kind of stuff. But as a kid, it does.
Yeah, it's true. They're almost like guardrails on your progression through life. That you hit a limit, something happens, it bounces you back the other way, and then you almost defines your path in life. And if you get a smack in the ear for doing something naughty, okay, so you hit that guardrail and you bounce along to the other side. You're maybe a little bit too virtuous, and then you get your fingers burnt. It's interesting to think about, but I don't know how I was gonna make some flippant comments on that, but then we managed to get right into it, and now I feel a bit silly. No. I wasn't meaning. I do. Please.
No, I do know you understand it. I think I'm more trying to help the listener here.
Yeah.
So because I have the same viewpoint as you on some things, but we have to constantly. And that information was off the back of a conference in America now. Whereas you spoke to me a week earlier, I would have been like, yeah, I know why are some people being so hurt by this? Because the reality is, it shouldn't hurt you. That is the reality. And if we really want to help people, that's the length we have to go to. But in modern day, we don't have that time. So actually your viewpoint isn't flippant. It's the reality of, and we need to be able to get people to see that same reality. So it's in context, yours, I wouldn't even brush what you said off. I'd say it's 100% correct. But it doesn't mean that the other one's incorrect either. So we have to realize that as human beings, some of us will have that mentally tough viewpoint and it is right. And some people have a mentally sensitive viewpoint. And what's that in between that we can both see that allows us to get everyone to this point where we're not getting tripped up by small things like that. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It totally makes sense. If anyone's listening, you understand what I was saying. I was meaning it in a heartfelt way. For me to try and help people out. But so I was gonna just mention, because we've been on for quite a while, and I know you're a busy man. This is just for my own personal gratification. Who's the toughest, dirtiest bugger you ever played against at rugby?
It's a good question. I would say not dirtiest, but because he's quite funny. Like Ellis Genge he's quite tough, right? He's a strong boy. And he could be quite grumpy in the field sometimes, but he's actually he's a good individual. Dirtiest, I don't know. I don't like to slag people off. There's one guy that pops to my mind that I think should have been banned for life, because he did something to a player like 2 years previous that actually saw that guy out for half a season, completely legal, got a red card, got a couple of bans, and then he was back playing again, and he tried to do something similar to my ankle when we were playing that team, and that kind of stuff really, that stuff really angers me, and he was still doing that. Those kind of guys need to be eradicated from the game. Like, just in order to win, you're hurting other people and stopping their careers. Like, I think it's pathetic. So yeah, he probably will never listen to it. You guys will never know who it is, because I don't believe in slandering other people on a public platform. But
you can tell me when we finish.
Yeah, I can tell you when you finish.
I think I know. I wonder if I could guess who it is, right? What about brawl? Have you ever been in one of these mass brawls you see on TV sometimes, when all 15 players in each team?
We've been in them, but I was never the brawler as much as I was the stop fighting, you guys have been ridiculous kind of thing. So
peacekeeper.
I was the peacekeeper, but there were times you get hot-headed and you stand your ground, but it resulted in a mass ball. It was more like a one-on-one, like, you've challenged me, I'm going to challenge you back.
Yeah.
That's about it.
It's fun. I like seeing it on TV. So Dom, before we go then, do you want to put up your websites and your socials that people can find you? I followed you on X this morning.
Oh, did you? I'm
I
still on
did.
there. Yeah, I haven't opened. I don't have access to that anymore at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I do have access, but I don't. I'm currently on like LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Mm-hmm. X
And
is going to be a big one. I think in the next couple of years, it's going to be huge.
do you think it's worth getting back into
I
it?
think so. Yeah,
Okay.
it's growing massively.
I'll trust your advice and
Well,
I'll get back
what
on
do
it.
I know? What do I
No,
know?
but I mean, you know more than I do. So that's all that counts. So, I mean, to be honest, where I would want people to come and look at, because that's where I'm going to put the focus, is www.identityhuman.com. And then the
Identity
socials
Human.
would be Instagram.
Identity Human.
Yeah, identityhuman.com.
All one word.
All one word. Surprisingly, that was still available
Yeah.
in the world of AI. No one had taken that domain.
Wow.
So, and that's so like that podcast, we got the Identity Human podcast by Don Armand. And the socials, Instagram is Don_Armand. That's still the same one I had from rugby. And then you can find me on LinkedIn with a slightly more corporate speak. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm most active.
Good. Well, I have to say that was a very quick hour and 20 minutes. That was
thank
fast.
you very much.
That was good fun. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. That was ace. A lot of
I know we had a few things that we didn't even manage to get onto. So,
but can we do that? We'll do that again. I think
that'd be amazing.
we can make this a relatively regular occurrence.
Yeah, sounds
if you're
good.
up for it. Because
Yeah,
it's fun.
of course.
It was good. We do resonate. We've got some good chat. Let's get some jokes, get some laughs, and some smiles.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Don Armand. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. And